Hi, so I want to talk about Photoshop today. We're going to start at the very beginning. I'm using the latest version of Photoshop, which is Creative Cloud 2018. Obviously, it may be a little bit different from your versions, but ultimately Photoshop has remained largely the same down the years, although it may look a little bit different. The fundamentals are still going to be the same. When you load up Photoshop, you're going to get a screen which looks something like this. Like I said, obviously there may be subtle differences within it. And the first thing we're going to do is create a basic document, and we're going to do some things to it which will create some effects which aren't going to be available in other graphic editors such as Paint. So first thing we want to do is create a new Photoshop file, and obviously we just click on the Create New icon, and then we're going to get this screen here now. So this screen has changed very slightly in recent years, but like I said, the fundamentals of this are quite similar. So here we have a number of presets available to you to use, such as across the top you've got all these different kind of options available to you depending on the type of document that you want to create. Now I'm just going to use like standard square, I suppose you could say, which is going to be quite dull really, but there are a couple of things that you need to be aware of here. So for example, you've got the width and height. So these for me are set in pixels, but they may be set for you in any one of these options. So don't confuse pixels with inches and go in there and choose say 600 inches by 600 inches, because this thing will be vast. It'll cover about the size of a building if you start doing this. So you must make sure you have the right amount of or the right size available for you. So we are designing for screen at the end of the day, so you should be using pixels, because if you wanted to print this out, then yes, you might use actual physical size, because then you're going to create a document of the size that you want, or the size that you need. Whereas if for us we're designing for screen, so we're just going to use pixels because our monitors work in pixels rather than actual size. You got orientation option. Obviously mine's not an issue because it's going to be a square. You've got resolution, so this will be the number of pixels in your image per inch. 300 is a lot. You probably don't need that higher resolution for majority of images. I'm going to tone mine down slightly, just because I know that mine doesn't need to be that memory, that kind of in depth. However, obviously, if you have a very, very highly detailed image, such as a photograph, then you may want to ramp it up a little bit. Now, you do need to bear in mind that the higher your resolution, the bigger the file size is going to be, and this can get quite big quite quickly. Obviously, you have more options there. So pixels per inch, pixels per centimeter, pixels per inch is the most common option for you. But ultimately, as long as you kind of know the amount of pixels that you're going to have, and you know that the larger that number, the higher the quality is going to be, but also the file size is going to get bigger. So this is going to be an issue if you're creating a document for web, where file size is going to be an issue. Color mode. Now, some things you need to be aware of here. Grayscale is going to be black and white, or shades of grey. So within it may be quite nice for a wintry scene, for example, or cityscapes are quite commonly done in grayscale. But if your image is only appearing in black and white, then you've probably chosen this. RGB is red, green and blue, so your image is going to be made up of red, green and blue colours, which is common for web or use on screen, because these are the only options available to us here. CMYK would be if you are doing a document that you want to print, because these are the colours available for someone to print. There is a wider range of colours available with CMYK. So you've got cyan, magenta, yellow and key. which form this color palette, and sometimes you will find that when you're creating a document with Photoshop it will look different to when you print it, which could be because of the differences between RGB and CMYK. I'm going to keep this with RGB because, like I said, I'm doing it for screen, and there's no need to do this any different. You could decide to make your background white, black, background color. You may also decide to have it transparent if you so wish. I would ignore these advanced options down here. Obviously you can pick color in here, so this is a bit more complex than what you'll find within Paint, and you'll see this screen an awful lot. There are simply much more colors available to you available here. I'm just going to keep it white because I'm just showing you an example right now. I'm going to click create, and this, one other thing, I'm going to name this document, I'm just going to call it test, and then I'm going to create this document, and as you see it's created it on screen. This is called our canvas, and we can do lots of different things with our canvas, but the first thing I'm going to do is do you see the layer down here? And one of the great things with Photoshop is that you can use multiple different layers, so this is immediately one of the big advantages over something like Paint where you have a single layer. So if you make a mistake on that single layer, then you may have to restart the entire document, whereas with Photoshop you can have multiple different documents. I'm going to create a layer from background. This will help me unlock the layer, because you see it has a padlock here. I'm not going to call it anything fancy because there's no need to do that in this instance. But you see, once I've created the layer, then there's no padlock there anymore, and now I can do whatever I want with this layer. And I'm going to start off by first of all using one of the most basic tools out there, which is going to be our horizontal text tool. Now all I need to do is click on it, and then we have all these different options across the top of the page up here. So first of all, I'm just going to click on the canvas. So the white screen is called canvas, and then I'm going to type out my name. Okay, now I don't want it to stay like this. I know it's a blue color straight away. That's what I used previously on Photoshop. This is why it's kept this particular color. First thing I'm going to do is change a different font. Now the first thing you'll notice is that there are 100 different fonts available to you here, and you just have to have a look at them really and see which one you prefer. I'm just going to pick quite a boring one really. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. You can type in there if you want to. I obviously have no need for that right now, and you can do usual things such as italic and bold or whatever you want within there. So if I click on it, you see it's obviously nice, a bit bigger now, and that's still that blue color, but I want to change that blue color. So in order to do that, I highlighted the text, and now you've got the color palette up here, which when I click on it, it brings up this box. You need to get used to using this box because it's in several places in Photoshop. I'm going to make it red, and I mean, if you see when I move it up and down this color bar, the range of different colors changes for you. So I'm going to use red, and you can see it previews the color on the text. Now until I click OK, this is a preview. Okay, so don't think that, oh my word, I've made it pink. I've really made an error here, because if you click cancel, it will go back to the color it was before. Okay, so don't worry too much about that until such point as you click cancel. The option is not saved. Another nice thing is that it gives you the hexadecimal code down here. Now this is a code for if you're going to put the color or use the color with a website, and when we come to do websites we'll cover hexadecimal codes in more depth, but if you wanted to find the color for use on the web, you could copy and paste it from here, which can be quite useful if you're trying to match images to background colors and so on when you're making web pages. So I'm just going to click OK here. And then quite a basic but funky tool really is this text warp up here, and this will give you, again, lots of different options that you can make to style your text. So, you know, I just clicked on arc, and you can change the settings on here. Again, this is a preview until such point as you click OK, because I'm not going to do anything too fancy with it. I'm just going to do that. However, as with anything on Photoshop, ultimately the best way that you learn this is actually by trying it out and playing with it. You know, just following what I'm doing will get you to know the basics, but in order to really understand it, you do need to play about with it, because ultimately people will never do exactly what you want in terms of the way the images that you want to create. So we have that text here now, and I'm just going to move it into the center, and I want to, because at the minute I can create this in Paint if I wanted to, and I'm going to do some things now which I can't do in Paint. So with the layer still selected, I'm going to right click on the layer, and right at the top there is an option called blending options, and we're going to use this a fair bit, at least in the early stages. And blending options will allow you to do things to the layer as a whole. And remember, we only have text on this layer, so I only want this effect to be applied to this layer. And I'm going to click on that, and then when we open it up, we have all sorts of different things that we can do here. And I'm not going to show you each one because that will take a very long time, and frankly you're better off trying them out. However, what I will do is just, you know, show you a couple of, you know, straight away. If I want to do a drop shadow, I've selected drop shadow there. If I click on it, then it gives me more options. So you can see that if I start to modify you know, the different options here, I can do things such as move where the drop shadow is. I can change the opacity so you can see it a bit clearer. You know, we can just do quite a bit with it. Also, the bevel and emboss is an effect that I quite like. And, you know, all of this stuff in here is something that I encourage you to have a play with, because, you know, I'm not going to show you each and every one of them. You know, it's not the time, and you'll get bored. You know, you need to be trying this out yourself. I'm going to choose something called a pillow emboss here, and again, I can make this a little bit bigger and just play about with the settings a little bit, and, you know, straight away I have now quite a nice little effect here. You can try, you know, all of this stuff in different ways. You know, so you may choose to give it like a yellow outline if you want, or, you know, whatever it might be. You know, just have a play. I certainly didn't mean to make that black. Go away. Okay, I'm going to turn that off because I don't like it. I'm going to click OK, and right now what I'm going to do is start importing other pictures, because this is obviously a use of a text tweak, and straight away, you know, it looks quite nice, I suppose you could say. So if you're making it for a company, you'd spend a bit more time doing this. But what I want to do is to bring in other images, because what I want to do is to manipulate this image with other images, and then we can start to see how we can quite quickly build an image up. So here I have one that I made earlier, and I just selected an image, I've dragged it in, and now I can put it wherever I want. Now you can see it's automatically put it on a new layer here. Okay, and I can move it to make it a bit bigger. Now bear in mind that the image will come in at its original resolution. Okay, so you might want to be wary about making these things too big, because once you start moving bitmap images and resizing bitmap images, they can quickly become distorted. I'm going to put this top left, and then I'm going to deselect it. Sorry, I'm going to click the tick. Now, actually, I don't really want the red kite on the blue background, so what we're going to use is something called a magic wand tool that will select everything connected of the same color. Okay, so Now I already have mine up here. However, you'll notice that with each one of these options down the left hand side, if you just hover your mouse over it, Photoshop will give you an overview of it, or if you hold your mouse down, you can get more options here. So with each one of these, if you hold your mouse down, you can have more options. Now I'm quite lucky that I have the Magic Wand tool already selected. And what I'm going to do is you need to make sure that your image is on the right layer, or your right layer is selected, otherwise you could get some unexpected results. So you can see here that my layer is selected, and all I'm going to do is go over the image and click on the blue background, and you can see that there is now the selection both around the outside of the image and the red kite. Okay, so you've got the data dotted line there. And all I'm going to do with this is hit delete, and it's probably going to give me that because I've not rasterized the layer. Sometimes it will give you this layer, this error, and in order to get rid of it, I'm just going to rasterize it. Okay, so turn it into a bitmap, and then it should let me do what I want. Okay, which it has done. Then we're going to deselect it, and then your red kite is available to use, and I can drag it about anywhere I want. And if you wanted to, you can do a free transform on the layer, and then you can move it around, or you can add your blending options to it, and so on. You need to click this tick here in order to get off it. Now, what you can try doing is, I'm obviously very keen on red kites. I have other things here, such as I enjoy playing golf, so I have got a picture of a golf club there woven. You may or may not be familiar with it. I'm just going to put that down here. One thing that you could do, by the way, with this is, if you click Control, you'll be able to move the particular image about and warp it, so you get some quite cool effects here. Remember, Control Z is your friend sometimes if you make an error here. If you click Shift, then it will always keep the same proportions when you drag the image from a corner. So let's say, for example, you don't want to warp it. So if you don't want to do this, for example, you want to keep the original proportions, you hold Shift down as you resize it. That can be quite useful. Now, if you guys have a go at doing an image like this, so you've got your name in there, and then you drag in images from other documents. This could quite easily be a banner, for a website. If you need to shape it more like a banner, so you'd have an image that's maybe 1,000 pixels across and say 50 pixels high, or maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, whatever. Then you could have a company name, and then you could have a logo, which could be a different image which is located elsewhere, and that could quite conceivably be a banner for a website. I'm just going to go back to the original layer, and I'm going to use something called the Paint Bucket tool, because I'm just going to add a background in here just to make it look nice. I'm just going to make it not too. I think it's going to look quite horrible actually, but yeah, I was not as bad as I thought. But again, clicking anywhere, it just gives it like a background, and you can do this for anything. Or you could even use a gradient if you wanted to. So the gradient is where it would shift from one color to another color, but I'll let you guys find that out. But the key thing is, with anything to do with Photoshop here, is ultimately the best way that you're going to learn this is by trying stuff out yourself and spending a lot of time in it. If you're a level 3 student and you think that you're going to get Photoshop after half an hour or 3 hours or even 10 hours, that's not going to happen. Graphic designers have been learning this for years, and ultimately, to become an expert at this thing and to be able to use it really proficiently, you need to use it a lot. And so, if you are not prepared to put hours in and not prepared to have patience with it, and try things out and make mistakes, then it's something that is going to come across quite soon. But I'd like you to have a go with that, and then you can move on to trying to create a totally bespoke image, maybe for a website, maybe for another reason of your choosing, and really kind of try different things, try different effects. Quite a cool effect is things like the filter. So the filter will put a filter on the layer itself. So maybe the best thing to show you this would be on the woven layer, and then I can try and put a filter, one that would really kind of show you what we're doing. Just crystallize, and then you can see it's put a filter on the layer itself, but it hasn't done it on any of the other layers. So, you know, again, try this out, and if the worst comes to the worst and you need to bin the layer, then it's not a disaster, because unlike Paint, if I need to bin the layer, all I will do is right click and delete layer, and then it's gone, but everything else is still there. Okay, now one other thing before we finish off this is the saving options are obviously much more in depth than otherwise, than previously. So I've just literally gone File, Save As, and this will save it to begin with as a Photoshop document. So this will keep all of your layers intact. You will not be able to use this on a website. Okay. However, if I did want to save it and use it on the website, you would save it as most likely a JPEG. Okay. However, if you want to do a little bit more than that, you can save it for use on the web, and then you have lots of other different options here. Okay, so again, you can save it as JPEG. You can set things like the color quality, the image quality here. You can make it good, you can make it bad, depending on obviously the quality of your document. Higher the quality, bigger the file size. So, and fortunately here, it's given me an estimate of 18K, which is nothing. But as I go up, you can see it's gone up to 50K. Now again, this isn't particularly something to worry about. However, if you have an image with lots of stuff in it, then this could quickly get bigger very quickly. And it's just something you need to be aware about. If you do save your image as a JPEG, or indeed anything other than a PSD, it will flatten the image. In other words, all of these layers will become one, and you will no longer be able to edit it or edit the individual layers within the document. So, you know, you do need to bear that in mind. The general rule is you would have a couple of PSD files maybe, just in case you needed to go back and edit it later on, and then have the JPEGs that you want to use professionally for your website, whatever it might be. Anyway, give that a go and have a play about with it before you go in and do anything major. And remember that when you are providing evidence of this for a rewarding body, you will need to take screenshots of the tools you are using, because that is the only way that we can tell that it is yours and not somebody else's straight from the internet. Okay, thank you. I'll see you soon. Bye.